All right, we're live. Silver Doctors on air. Wednesday afternoon edition. It is what is it? The ninth day of the month of October. My name is Mike. Got my other half here, Mr. Paul Half Dollar. Paul, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good today, Mike. Happy Wednesday to you. How you doing today?
I am excellent. Looking forward to some good back and forth, and also to find out what else is going on there. Because there's only so much we can cover ourselves directly, but then the good thing is we have a lot of smart viewers out there that always chime in with their thoughts and news reports that we may not be able to investigate ourselves. So, should be fun and entertaining this afternoon. So, as always, we'll welcome a couple people into the chat. Give it a second before we get started. Want to make sure everyone is included. And so let me know where you're watching from, and we'll definitely acknowledge your presence and welcome you to this live stream this afternoon. So I will check in. Let me see here. Let me wait till my window pop up. And then who's watching us thus far? We got SG fans. We got Silver Junkie. Jessel. I thought we were sounding right. Harry. SJ fans, Gary. Okay, yeah. So hope I didn't butcher anybody's name out there. But welcome to the live stream. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And what else will go? So let's get started right away. So we got a couple people tuning in. And so Paul Half Dollar, what's on your mind this afternoon to get us started?
Oh man, Mike. It's not good. It's not good. What's on my mind?
Is it ever good? Is
It's
it ever
not
really
good at all. It's not good at all today. And it's been on my mind for like the last, I would say, 18 hours nonstop. And I've really thought this through.
Okay.
So I want to have a nice, good, robust discussion with you here, Mike. And
Okay.
I got my links already set and everything. But the outlook is not good when it comes to the paper, gold, and silver markets, Mike. I've been connecting dots, and it does not paint a pretty picture.
Yeah. Okay. Well, give me some of those dots there.
Okay, well, I don't even know how to begin to lay this out, right? You know, are we in a trade war?
That's what we're being told, yes. But I have my suspicions about what that is. But go ahead.
That's what we're being told.
Yeah, that's what we're
Are
told.
we in a currency war?
That's what it's turned out to be, yes.
That's what it's yeah. Have we finally labeled China a currency manipulator?
I want to say they threw out the idea a while ago, but they didn't run with it.
No, they did run with it.
They did run with it. Okay, so they did. Okay, but it's not one of the things where it's like touted as being a currency manipulator directly, is it? Because I remember it was in question, even though yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, it is touted as that. We
Okay.
covered it, and I've got like here's right here. I'm going to send you this. This is the press release from the Treasury Department's website, where we actually designated them as a currency manipulator.
Okay.
Actually, that's the link to us. Hold on, let me give you the link to the Treasury Department's website. And it literally says, like, the title of the Treasury Department press release is literally Treasury designates China as a currency manipulator.
So August 5th.
Right.
Okay. So this is relatively new. Okay, go ahead.
So we're in a trade war, right? We're in a currency war. The United States has labeled China as a currency manipulator.
Okay.
And there was one more thing, but I can't remember what my third point was about that. We're in a trade war. We labeled China as a currency manipulator, and the United States Treasury holds over 8,000 tons of gold as a monetary asset on our reserves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's connect these dots here. Now, see, I think that what's going on is China moving into the COMEX is just a classic case of if you can't beat them, join them. Everybody's heard that expression, right?
Right.
And I don't think China can't beat the United States, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the premise, the bottom line is we're in a trade war. China's a currency manipulator. We're in a currency war. The Treasury holds gold as monetary reserves. Now, look at this. This is a tweet from President Trump just a couple days ago. This is from, it's actually from July 26th. I'm going to send this to you and see if you can pull this up on the screen right here.
Okay.
And this is kind of about China and the trade war and national security and all this and all that. But this tweet, I'm going to read it as you're doing your magic there, Mike. And it says, there may or may not be national security concerns with regard to Google and their relationship with China. If there is a problem, we will find out about it. I sincerely hope there is not, right? Substitute the word Google for COMEX, right? There may or may not be national security concerns with regard to COMEX and the relationship with China. If there is a problem, well, he's not going to find out about it, right? He's not even going to say anything about it. But here's the thing, Mike.
Yeah.
We're in a currency war. China's a currency manipulator. Gold is money. Why in the world is China going into the COMEX, Mike? If you look at the COMEX, right? So here's another link, and I'm just setting the stage, and I got to set the stage this way because I don't know how else to say it.
Okay.
Because basically the bottom line is that the Shanghai gold futures contracts begin trading in on the COMEX on Monday, right? So that's Monday. Just gold futures contracts, and they're financially settled. So they're not even settled in physical delivery. It's a pure financialized product on COMEX. Now, if you look into that, right, that launched this Monday, if you look at like the facts and their little PDF about it, what it says is it goes off of the Shanghai PM benchmark. And guess who controls the Shanghai PM benchmark? The People's Bank of China sets the Shanghai Gold Exchange PM benchmark. So let's just connect these dots here, Mike. Okay. We're in a trade war. China's a currency manipulator. The United States Treasury just designated China as a currency manipulator in August, right? But we're going to let the People's Bank of China come in and do whatever they're going to do on the Shanghai on the COMEX. I mean, is that not a national security issue right there? Think about this. Think about Venezuela and think about Iran. Yeah. When all else fails and there's just no hope in the world, what do you use to keep your country afloat?
Use gold. Yeah. Now, so watch this. So as you're speaking, as you're connecting some dots, I'm like, oh, let me add a dot in there myself. And so here's an article here that keeps coming across my radars. Is about China gold buy spree tops 100 tons during trade war. And so I think it's just let me see. Since there's a time frame here where they've been literally getting their weight up extensively. So not only are they labeled trade war, labeled currency manipulators, we're in a trade war. You just brought out the facts of them actually setting the price for the COMEX paper stuff, and then we have the fact that they've been getting tonnage, 100 tons over the last couple of years, it looks like. But that's just what they tell us, and we all know that they're sitting on a lot more than what they actually report. So, so let me ask you a question: what is all this connecting to? Where is this heading?
Okay, I think I figured that out, and that's why my brain's been racking it. And it's that little PDF of that, like the facts on the COMEX from CME Group that talks about the PM benchmark being set by the People's Bank of China. Here's where it's heading, right? And here's why I say I think it's a case of if you can't beat them, join them. I think this is, Mike, who are the most efficient people in the world, if you really think about it? Have you ever ordered anything off eBay from China, Mike?
Yeah.
Mike, I have placed an order, and this is no lie. And this was like 2 years ago. But I placed an order, and I had something coming from Louisiana, and I had something coming from China in the same order on eBay. And the package from China got here before the package from Louisiana got here, Mike. Think about this, right? The Chinese are going in there because they are masters of efficiency. Right. So I think that what's going on is they've been called in because we know they've been scraping the bottom of the barrel in the COMEX for physical gold. We know there's a scramble for physical gold. So if you're at an extreme emergency situation with your logistics and your delivery, you need to call in the Chinese because they're the masters of global trade and movement of product around the world.
Yeah,
that's where this is headed.
Okay. With all these dots being put together now, they are going to control the price of the paper market from the Shanghai aspect. Will they end up determining the overall price in the days ahead, like during this next 10-year reset structure period? Is this setting them up for them to be the entity that determines the final price of gold in general?
Yes, I think it is. But I don't think that they're going to be setting the price now. I think that China's role in this is going to be to provide the logistics, right? They need to get China on the inside to make sure that they can get their monthly scrambles to deliver gold as it needs to be delivered throughout the world, because that's what a serious bind they're in.
So where's the gold coming from?
I don't know. That's what we're bringing in the Chinese for, because the Chinese are going to work that through their magic of efficiency and international trade dominance, shipping, logistics, and all this and all that. Here's why I say that, right? Here's why I say that. If you think back to like 2015, because this is another thing, and it got me thinking that something that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, right? You said you don't like the whole concept of like the good guys versus the bad guys. And that really got me thinking, because I don't really like that concept either. So I started thinking about like this last night. I'm starting to look at it more like we call it a cartel, right? That's what a cartel is. They get together and they coordinate things. It could also be like a mafia or whatever you want to call it, right? A gang. But, the bottom line is when it comes to like good guy versus bad guys, I don't think it's like that. I think it's more like rival gangs competing against each other. And then you have the whole if you can't beat them, join them thing. So China's just joining forces with the U.S. in this gold market. And what's going to ultimately happen is, sure, just like in the mob movies, when the opportunity comes, China's going to stab the United States in the back, kill the boss, then you become the boss, right? As far as how the mafia movies go. So that's coming down the line. But first, China's just looking to assimilate. Why do I think they're looking to assimilate? Because of a couple things that happened in 2015. I think China was testing out their economic warfare skills in 2015. We had a shock devaluation that people weren't expecting in early August, or in like mid-August. And then we also had the stock market starting to crash towards the end of August in 2015. I think China was in there. But on that same token, and this is why I think it's if you can't beat them, join them. I really do think that the United States nuked China in 2015 in Tianjin. Right?
With that factory, with that explosion of the warehouse, whatever?
Yes. There's no way that is a factory explosion. Think about like a flashlight, right? Yeah. Think about the very first flashlights in the world. They were like huge and they were like clunky and they had these crazy batteries and these huge lanterns. Think about a flashlight now. They're as bright as can be and they can fit in the palm of your hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So think about, we've had research and development on nuclear weapons for 70 years. Right? A surgical tactical nuclear strike is not going to look the same as Nagasaki or Hiroshima in the 40s.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That is a tactical nuclear strike against China. So I think that what was happening there is there was some testing out of economic warfare skills and actual warfare skills. And China find out real quick that they do not have the upper hand on the United States because the United States can launch a tactical nuclear ballistic missile from a low-orbiting satellite and strike China at will. And China had to step down. They were forced to step down.
Yeah, and so as you're talking about that, I pulled it up and I'm looking at that mushroom cloud of smoke. And so just when I saw that years and years ago, I'm thinking like, man, that was it had such force, and then it just kept going and going. So yeah, I'm playing it now, and it's it's one of the things I question.
And so, aftermath photos.
Yeah, like look at that thing, man. Oh my goodness. So yeah, but my question would be then. Okay, if China did suffer a nuclear situation there, they didn't respond in a way that a typical, country would respond if they were under attack. And so, that's why I'm kind of like, oh, you sure? I mean, definitely something went off there, but was that like, why did if it was done? Because, okay, put it like this. Over the last decade, I've noticed that Russia and China themselves, especially Russia with Putin, not a fan, whatever. He's a president of his own country, whatever. But they've been very patient and lenient as the U.S. has continued to poke at them in all types of ways with Syria and Iran, all that stuff like that. So I kind of can see how that could be one of the things where it was nuclear or whatever, which would have pointed back to us as a poke to say, hey, let's go to war now. We need a war now. Let's do this now so we can thwart some of these monetary problems we're having, because now we get a boom of the industrial military complex and stuff like that. But if that is the case, we're just talking. China didn't respond, so they say, we're not going to attack, but we want in on the gold and stuff like that in the futures ahead. We want everything now, or we're going to come. Oh yeah, so I'm just ranting now, but
So, but see why I've been racking my brain on this for like the past 18 hours. Mike, because it's like a show of force, right? It's like the United States puffing out their chest and saying, listen, China, you do not want any of this. You see what just happened in Tianjin? And why is the Space Force such a big topic? Why is it so important to develop a Space Force? It's not to fight space aliens, right? It's because that pretty soon everybody's going to have tactical nukes sitting in low Earth orbit being able to strike anywhere on the planet at a moment's notice. That's why it's there. This is the only conclusion that I can come to, Mike, because, like for example, like the Fed, right? There's no fixing the Fed. You have to abolish the Fed. You have to end the Fed. There's no fixing the fraudulent, corrupt, and evil COMEX, right? It's China going in there does not help anything out. So you have to think of, well, why is that? What's going on here? And, President Trump is so quick to call out national security and China and secrets and this and that. And we're talking about gold. What's more important in this world than gold? Because it's just like mercenaries, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't pay your mercenary army, you don't have an army, right? That got me thinking something else about Clinton. I think this whole Clinton thing is a psyop so they can get a little bit more fundraising because they're thieving, conniving people like that. But anyway, like if you can't pay your mercenaries, then you do not have a mercenary army. Right.
Yeah.
So these are just some things that I've been thinking about lately. Actually, it's the only thing I've been thinking about for the last 18 hours. Thoughts on any of this, Mike?
I hear you 100%. And you threw out the word Clinton. So I was I remember I sent you that video the other day. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that I saw something again yesterday, and it looks like because there's no Democratic candidates that look like they can actually disrupt the current narrative of Trump repeating. Hillary Clinton, I think that she's like third or fourth on the polls, and she's not even considered a candidate really because of the American people or the mainstream media pumping her up into the hype. So I'm looking for an article, but I can't find it. But I saw like there's actual number of percentages that she's ahead of people who are actually running for presidency, and she's not even made an official announcement. Apart from having been on, I saw 3 or 4 shows now with her daughter, smiling and giggling and laughing and. So we'll see. But one thing, let's get into the chat a little bit because, as always, if we don't get in that chat, we can go without connecting with the audience. So as always,
no, let's go in the chat.
You got excited there. Go ahead.
No, it's something I want to continue the conversation that we're talking about. Let's get into the chat though.
Okay, sounds good. So let me go. So as always, for those that are watching, highlight at Silver Doctor so to stand out. We can see if there's a question or thought directly. And then also there's a number, 567-336-0844. Give us a call if you want to get your question answered or to stop our rant at any minute. All right, so let me see if I see any questions. We got a couple people checking in from Ontario. We got Corpus Christi, Mr. Low Blood Pressure. We got Pennsylvania. We got John. Okay, this is old. Let me get caught up to speed. Keep an eye on the junk bonds. Yeah, that's something worth keeping attention on for sure. It all depends on how much gold China has. Looks like we're talking about the accumulation. It says China mines 450 tons a year. Nothing leaves China. Yeah, that day that the actual number will be given, assuming the People's Bank of China will say we have 32,000 tons. Or whatever is going to be a shock to humanity because at that point, whatever that so-called 8,300 tons sitting in Fort Knox is, will make it. It's going to look very, very small, and then we might find out that it's not even there. Man, so I don't see any questions. I see a couple of thoughts here, but if you got a question or a thought you want to share with us to highlight, at Silver Doctors, highlight it so we can get that answered. So Paul Habdal, you got excited before we checked in with the audience. So. What was that thought you got excited about?
Yeah, here we go. Crap, I just lost that screen. Where is it? Hold on. Okay, here it is. Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna give you a link here.
Okay.
Okay, here's another link. This is what I got excited about, right? When we look at stuff like this, right? This is just further proof and further docs, right? Look at this. This is an article from this morning on Zero Hedge. Look at that. That article title. The article title is Nasdaq tightens the noose on IPOs of small Chinese companies. Right? So the bottom line is like everybody's ratcheting up on the pressure, right, on China. Everybody's ratcheting up the pressure on they're stealing our secrets. They're engaged in all this crazy stuff on Wall Street and our markets, but we're just going to let them walk on into the COMEX. Isn't that something there, Mike? I mean, this whole thing is stinking to high heaven to me.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, yeah, because with the whole stock market, that's, that whole industry there, the Nasdaq, with that COMEX stuff, settling, I guess, assuming they're going to be settling in physical.
No,
so
they're not.
They're not. But here's the thing, like how much, okay, so China wants the real, I would imagine China wants the real thing. And so at what point will they get tired of the paper game? Because if they continue to manipulate the price and keep it at 15 or lower or whatever, I'm assuming they're getting involved so that they can sustain a price level and be able to take advantage of it in the meantime. But once again, I doubt they're stashing and collecting large amounts of electronical backed so-called promises to pay in the form of those electronically traded funds or whatever futures.
Mm-hmm.
They want physical, and so
Yes.
will they be redeeming some of that to get physical because they're not just doing this for the fun of it? They want physical to add to their stash for the day they announce to the world what they're sitting on. So how does all this COMEX situation, if it's not done in physical for them, how will that be a problem, you think?
Because it opens the door, right? It's that getting that foot in the door so that the change comes later. I remember everybody was like laughing at me back in the early 90s. I was like, why are you microchipping a dog? All that's going to do is get us to start microchipping humans. And now people are microchipping humans, right? Mm-hmm. So by China getting into the COMEX, they're getting in that door. All they need to do is get that foot in the door. And once they get that foot in the door, then the natural progression is just going to happen. Because think about this. They both have, as you're saying, they both have a desire to keep the gold price down because China wants to stack the physical gold. So that's China's motive in all this. But for the deep state globalists, right, that whole motive is to just perpetuate the US dollar to keep plundering the rest of the world from anything and everything, right? That's both perishable and non-perishable. So both China and the United States have an incentive to keep the gold price down, but they're different types of incentives. But just naturally, we know that it's a losing proposition and they're not going to be able to maintain the manipulation forever. And at that point, the Western control of the manipulation falls and the Chinese control of the manipulation is on the rise because of all the amount that they've stacked. Granted, what does the world look like at that point? Have we gotten to the crisis and the monetary reset at that point? I don't know. But I just know that what I think is to start this all off, it's about getting that foot in the door so China can see what they're able to do in the COMEX.
All right. Okay. So you've done a good job of setting something up for us. And so we'll see how things play out. So I want to shift gears slightly myself. We can come back to this as always. But yesterday,
yeah, this is all just fresh. So this is all just like in my... Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. It looks like we might have a call. No, we didn't. So let's talk about your friend, Mr. Jerome Powell yesterday. And, the announcement of it's not QE, but it is QE, but it's not. No, don't. Let's just make that. Hold on. I remember I watched the Q&A session. He's like, well, before I answer your question, let me just confirm. Let me reassure you, this is not QE. And so this is not, QE, of course, like it was in the past. But we will be adding to our balance sheet and providing liquidity. And I'm thinking, like, how dumb? How dumb do we think the average person probably don't understand it. So they're probably just not dumb, just not informed as to how it operates. But you got economists sitting in the audience. You got commentators watching mainstream news. They saying this is not QE, but we're adding to our balance sheet. And I've been watching all types of people on Twitter going back and forth about Jim Rickards posted on it and stuff like that. So a lot of people are chiming in on it. So is it official QE in your opinion?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think that 2 weeks ago, I speculated that I think it's literally just straight up debt monetization of the United States government because it really started picking up right before the end of the fiscal year for the U.S. government, right? Which the new fiscal year just started. And if you think about it, it was right at the end of the year when there was probably this crunch for money. Who knows? I mean, granted, the debt ceiling's been raised, but there's still demand for people to buy that debt, right? We talk about this United States ballooning deficits are crowding out other opportunities. So, who's to say that these banks aren't buying up U.S. treasuries, right? And then posting those U.S. treasuries as collateral and getting the funding, from the Fed that way to keep the interest rates low. So this is just straight up, Jim Willie calls it Zimbabwe debt monetization. Right. And that's kind of what this looks like to me, because, Ron Paul said this the other day, right? We don't know what banks are benefiting, right? Because the Fed is not audited. So how do we know what's going on with the Fed there? How do we know they're not just straight up monetizing the U.S. government right now? We don't know that. We can't know that. I do think it's QE. QE by another name. They're always going to have, is it a pre-owned car? Is it a used car? Is it a clunker? What is it? It's something, but it's going to have a name, right? And, we've been wondering what the new name is going to be. And now the new name, like just informally, is not QE, That was like the big joke last night.
So I got a thought I want to share. And this just came to me just as of last 24 hours. And so we got a call. Someone is attempting to call. It looks like it keeps dropping, but so I'll try to get you on here if it goes through. But we don't know who the banks are. We know an article came out last week saying J.P. Morgan was one of the leading banks or whatever. And so a thought came to mind in regards to after the Q&A session was over with about the fact that they're now officially going to be providing as much accommodations as needed to keep this expansion going. We already know that's the agenda because they can't let this business cycle correct. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking like, as the rates drop, as funding becomes an issue around the planet, what products and services that were created will probably suffer the most as far as there not being nowhere near enough funds to meet obligations other than the derivatives. So I'm thinking like all the too big to fail banks that are interconnected with the derivatives aspect, they're right now probably taking some losses, some hits or whatever on the back end, stuff we will never know about. So why not provide continuous liquidity for those transactions behind the scenes to where this QE process is underway now could solely be just for the derivatives around the world. And so I'm thinking about if they attempt to just try to keep things quote unquote normal without having to actually call it QE, but just continuously adding it as needed, why couldn't they probably try to get this thing up to several $1 trillion or not? Because the derivatives market is quadrillions, but yet if you don't want this expansion to end, because once this thing ends, it's a wrap. There's no redoing this because it's been so artificially manipulated. What's the chance that they can try to run up their balance sheet incrementally until there's a complete collapse and they have to spike it up and try to get off as much repo action, quote unquote, until whenever? All along they're doing it to support the derivatives that are imploding behind the scenes to where their balance sheet can literally come close to what the derivative exposure is for the global economy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are all great points. And then the dollar's done, right? I mean, the dollar's going to be toast when it's all. And but the good thing is that people are starting to call it out for what it is, right? They're starting to talk less about like this is Fed intervention, and I'm starting to hear words like manipulation and suppression of interest rates. So this is actually a good thing that we're finally starting to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Because these are in the mainstream is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is, and it's going to get to that point where it goes parabolic because it has to. And at that point, you can kiss the dollar goodbye, which brings us right back to gold and silver full circle, which it always does, So those are good points that you make there. Anything else that Powell said in that interview that you found interesting? Because I didn't actually watch the press conference.
I ended up going in and out of it, but it was the same exact thing. And it's becoming stronger. As far as the questions were a little bit more, 2 or 3 questions were more direct. Like there wasn't no beating the bush. She was like, this is what it looks like. Is this it? Then that's why he said, no, let me correct you first. It's not QE because she was asking somewhat straightforward questions that has been asked all along. So it's no new questions, but he was more, he was more reaffirming of the fact that their toolkit, that they will be using what they'd used before. And they mentioned negative rates again. He's like, we've looked at it, we've investigated based upon everybody else around us that's doing it. That's not something we're looking at doing. But he didn't say, no, there's no absolute way we can do that. We're not doing that. He didn't say it like that. He didn't convince me that that wasn't a part of the toolkit. But he mentioned that no matter what, the toolkit from before will be used again without a doubt. That's going to be the first thing they're doing. But now I'm thinking like with this continuing of the accommodative policy that he keeps mentioning, they're going to accommodate as much as needed. I'm thinking like they don't really even have to announce QE because when something breaks by that time, they're going to try to probably have it around the time the presidential cycle period ends. Whoever the politician is will be calling for some type of assistance in the form of buying program or helicopter money or whatever. So it'll be easier for them to inject on quantitative nature when the government asks for it directly. And so the goal, I imagine, is just to string this thing along with as much quiet activity behind the scenes as possible until the United States government demands that they take action to fund or buy or support or whatever as a result of things really becoming chaotic out in the main economy where inflation hits on our part or on their part. So, nothing new, but it's just continuation of the same thing. But he's getting stronger in his stance as to what they're going to do.
And you make great points there. And part of it, that just kind of frustrates me is, once again, it's the banking system, right? Once again, it's the financial system, right? So the little guy, as we always say, the saver out there, the Fed is actively having to do more and more every day to suppress interest rates to kill the savers. And it's just, everybody just accepts this at face value, and let's ask Powell a million questions about it. And, it's really sick and twisted. But here's the thing, right? The stock market is not like rallying off of this news, right? It's not enough anymore. I mean, it's like, back when we were in college, not that old $50 ever went to like a party or anything like that. But like, you can only get so drunk, and then it's just like you black out. And then, not that I've ever did that or would recommend that or anything like that. But my point is, you can't go beyond a certain point because it no longer is effective, right? So just coming out and saying, we're looking at large-scale asset purchases. I think that was the exact phrase. I don't remember the context it was in, but just QE in general, this is not cutting it anymore, right? Cutting interest rates at a measured rate, this is not cutting it anymore because basically, as I describe it, basically the economy is like, on life support, right? And nobody will pull the plug, but it's never going to come to because it's brain dead.
Now watch this. So I'm looking at the chat, and so Mason Tricks said something about trickery. Unplug the Fed.
Yes.
And I'm thinking like, okay, but think about what we're asking for or what we're calling for, because if we unplug the Fed or do away with the Fed the way that it appears, like that would be the best solution. But don't forget about the time frame of pain, because every single thing, the Fed's product is the Federal Reserve note, which happens to be our national security. So that means if you unplug the Fed or do away with the Fed, that means there's going to be a massive default, or the government's going to have to try to step in with the issuing of a new currency backed by them, but they're going to have to try to make right all the Federal Reserve notes that are basically defaulted on if we just let them go. Confidence is going to be lost, so whatever is going to be given to us will also be a problem as well. So it's going to be a massive amount of broken promises because someone's asset or somebody's liability, like we talked about on Monday. So all the things that you have parked in products and services are all subject to the Federal Reserve note. So it's one of the things we should be careful what we wish for, because if you're dependent upon what is currently our primary currency, then you're gonna come out on the losing end. And so gold and silver will definitely be, recipients of any currency's defaults, but still, majority of the world don't have them. So it's one of the things we want it, but then do you really want it? Because the pain process is going to be very lengthy.
Yeah, it's going to be very lengthy, and it's going to be nasty. I mean, there's no way around it, right? I mean, this is not going to be fun economic times ahead. Not at all. That's why gold, silver, and skills are what are going to be the ticket to the future here.
Yeah. It says, how much more debt can you create is a question out there. And so so the Federal Reserve, in my opinion, they're on their last leg of credibility and the ability to continue to keep the public and politicians all dumbed down, bought off, and paid for, because everything boils back to confidence, as someone mentioned out here. People don't have confidence, and they realize that there's no purchasing power in those notes and digits anymore. That's going to be hard to keep people in control. Therefore, mass chaos will ensue. And so their very jobs are all on the line. And so I think that they're going to do as much as they can to buy as much time to keep this economic expansion going, because they know it's going to be the last one of this kind before there has to be a restructuring and rebranding of the monetary system globally. Because when the Fed goes, because there's all the other central banks around the world will probably go belly up first and the Fed last. And so once the Federal Reserve, which is the first and the last bank, go, then there's going to be a need for something new. But in the meantime, they can probably rack off a couple. I'm going to be bold and say, as I mentioned earlier about the derivatives market, if it's 1 quadrillion, 2 quadrillion, they can easily try to pump out 1 or 2 quadrillion and try to match that or try to counter the losses from all those interbanking bets, so that those things have funds. So they could probably try to pull off a quadrillion dollars. What do you think? I mean, something to give before then, but they can attempt to try to put a quadrillion into the system, whatever it looks like. Who knows? Yeah,
that's 1,000 trillion. But I mean, if you think about it, Zimbabwe had a $100 trillion note, so that is not out of the realm of possibility. And here's the other thing is, we talk about, and it was a person in the chat who said it the very first time, the great print, right? We've had 2 great prints. In the next one, this one's going to be fast, and it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be the most severe with the most balance sheet expansion, and it's going to go parabolic.
And what's even more dangerous about that is that it's going to be digitally. It's going to be led by digits, and so we're not talking about solely just paper anymore, because there's only, of course, what we know in physical cash, 1.7 trillion in paper on the planet in Federal Reserve note terms, but there's countless, however much, in digital form. So the digits they're going to go up massively, which I'm saying could be a part of that digital transferring of just debits and credits on balance sheets around the world to counter some of the derivatives. So that could be a quadrillion on just digital form. But then if that leaks out somehow, some way, and to try to monetize that in paper form, then that's where we can start seeing some notes that have an extra 0 or 2 on it as inflation in the real world picks up to where it can be desperate measures. And so speaking of which, here's a little project I put together years ago. It's just still sitting here, but this was what I consider like a hyperinflated. This is a $1 bill with just 2 zeros on it.
Oh, so you got to lower it down. Wait, no, never mind. I'm sorry. I guess I couldn't see it.
It's George Washington. So it's a $1 bill, but I had to add 2 on it because this is just 100. This is This is what I call a Treasury note. I mean, this is something project-wise I was dealing with, but I got a lot of them, different ones. So I added zeros to all our current money base and gave it some funny colors, like they do in all those depressed nations. They make them real colorful and pretty. So I just made something like that. But anyway. Yeah,
the 20 peso in Mexico is like stiff plastic, and it's blue, and it's got like a transparent window in it made out of plastic. I mean, it's just crazy stuff.
I think it was I was in Guatemala. The Gonzales is clear, or the Costa Rican, whatever. So all them Central American currencies are clear plastic.
And they're plastic because they have to be more durable because they actually use cash down there, right? Going to the market for taxis, for the bus, for all of that stuff.
Oh my goodness! So we do have. Okay.
I saw a bunch of questions. I don't know if you want to scroll through.
That's what I was about to do. I was going to get to a question here from Joseph. It says, what are your thoughts that Shanghai was brought on to cover calls on future delivery?
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I don't want to speculate one way or another, but there's definitely something fishy going on now too, right? And it's just gold, right? These contracts are just gold. They're not silver futures contracts. So it's Shanghai gold contract. So what it is what's coming up on Monday are Shanghai gold contracts offered on the COMEX, only financially settled, priced in either US dollars or Chinese yuan. That's the other thing. It's also priced in Chinese yuan if you want. So yeah, there's definitely, I look at it like, I don't know who the big people are. We talk about these families that begin with R and stuff like that. So like, they're like the cartel boss, right? These ones way up at the top.
Yeah.
And then, the United States and China, they're just actors, right? They're still bosses, right? But they're not like the boss.
Yeah.
So they're still definitely, because here's the other thing, right? My thoughts on President Trump, right? I think he's a deep state globalist in patriots' clothing. On that same token, Z is a deep state globalist in communists' clothing, right? Because everybody, it's sad, right? And I also thought about the book 1984, right? When I was writing my article this morning, because at the very end, right, Winston loves Big Brother, right? That's the very end of the book. And that's how it ends up, because at the very end, you're powerless and you either have to, it's like I said, if you can't beat them, join them, right? In the case of 1984, in the end, everybody loves Big Brother. So my point there is there could have been a time where there was this hope for China. There could have been a time where China was going to rescue the world and bring the world back onto sound money. But Z's bought and paid for now, just like everybody else, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now here's another great thought here from Theo. It says, you guys are aware that billions of ounces of gold were discovered in the Grand Canyon in 1902. So the steamboat was moved down onto the Colorado River to remove the obvious gold. And so, yeah, I've heard about that. And so there's, YouTubers out there to talk about that. But it's one of the things where it's in the ground, and the process of getting it above ground and getting it into the hands of the people or to the monetary system will take some time. And so I can see the U.S. using the federal lands because that's another thing I find very interesting, how they have certain sections of the country mapped off as just Federal Reserve protected areas that the government owns. Like, at what point do the government as an entity can they own land that belongs to the people, supposedly? But so they're hiding something. So no doubt there's things there and assets there because, once again, those regions have not been allowed to be worked with to pull out those metals. So there's definitely stuff there. Now, how all that plays out in the future as their monetary system shifts, who knows? And that's why I think this whole COMEX situation with China and the U.S. working together now, and then, as you mentioned about China one day probably taking the lead, how that all plays into a part of the next monetary system that will start off with some type of gold and international, gold settlement for international trade, but yet, the people won't be allowed to use it. That's my only thing. Like, the people will not be allowed to use gold and silver in as legal tender again, because that takes away the control of governments to continue to do what they do best, which is to make promises and to expand themselves with those promises. So, not sure how that'll work out, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really buy into the whole billions and billions of ounces in the Grand Canyon thing myself. I kind of think of it like almost like kind of like flat Earth, right? Where flat Earth is a psyop, right? And the first thing that they go to when people start questioning the moon landing, they'll be like, "Oh, well, you probably believe the Earth is flat." So it's kind of one of those psyop type things where gold's not really worth that much. There's billions and billions and billions of ounces just laying around in the Grand Canyon. Or the other one is like, we're going to be mining asteroids in outer space and bringing home the gold. Good luck with that, Mike.
Okay. No, this is the flat earther situation, without going deep into it, because this is one of the things where I never really argue it. I'm just thinking like, with no doubt that what's been given to us in the form of maps and whatever are all, they're provided by a single source, like Google Maps, whatever. We know that's just Google. So Google has a way of trying to hide things. Anyway, but just as a way of whether it's flat or round or whatever, the moon, according to my eyes, is round. And then the sun, with my shades on, when I look up there, is round as well. So that I really wouldn't say that the Earth is then flat, because that's two circular spheres in the air. And why would our planet be flat and square or whatever? So that's one of the things where I would just assume that it's round, just based upon the moon and the sun and God's word.
Anyway. Well, let me state, I do not believe in flat Earth. Right? I'm not a flat earther at any means. I don't know if that's what I just.
No. I just want to throw that out there because I never mentioned that publicly before. But if you got two circles, two things that appear to be a circle according to my eyes, and of course eyes can be deceiving, but how can they really alter my eyes at the current point looking up unless there's a big, 8K movie screen in the sky that anyway, but
one more point, Mike, and this is the last point I'm going to make about this Shanghai Gold Exchange COMEX strange bedfellows thing. Do you remember the name David Mester? Remember that name? We talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Refresh my memory.
Okay, David Mester or Meister was the head of the CFTC enforcement for those 2008 to 2018 when they were investigating silver manipulation.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then they found no cause to bring anything to anybody, and then he abruptly resigned. Then he went to go work for a law firm, and now who is this guy representing? He's representing the head of the gold and silver precious metals trading desk at JP Morgan that's charged with the criminal RICO racketeering charges, right? So here's the bottom line, right? Scroll down, and here's the point that I'm getting with that. Scroll down to number 10 on that right there. I'm getting good at popping up these links, Mike. I don't know. I'm getting good. But so this is the facts, right, for these new Shanghai gold futures on the COMEX. And scroll down to number 10, and that tells you everything that you need to know about this new development right there.
All right, so let me zoom in a little bit. Scroll down to number 10. All right, 8, 9, 10. It says, what is the regulatory status of these COMEX products? Okay, so these products are listed on the COMEX, which are regulated by the Commodity Futures Trade Commission, CFTC. Okay, the Shanghai Gold Exchange which generates reference price is regulated by the People's Bank of China.
Yep. So that's all you need to know right there. You got the People's Bank of China and the CFTC in bed together. Is this a good thing, Mike? This is not a good thing.
It can't be a good thing.
This is not. It can't be a good thing.
It
cannot
can't
be a good thing. And where's President Trump on this? This is a national security issue, right?
Really
Nixon closed the gold window in 1971 because everybody was getting all their gold back. You know, you don't think that President Trump wants to make this national security issue? He'll make anything else a national security issue.
Yeah, let me see if there's a 1-800 number so I can call somebody and file a complaint, because this is not right. This is I'm just playing.
It's not right, Mike. It's not.
Man, like this is something you won't hear on Fox or CNBC or MSNBC, like as a scandal or something worth looking into, because something smells funny here.
It smells real funny. It smells real
So
funny.
I'm thinking like, okay, so I saw, what was this? I think I saw a tweet from there's a news story was referring to something President Trump referenced to about it's not looking likely that there will be a deal. And so when it comes to this trade deal, it's been, a year, approaching 2 years now of tensions between the two leading nations on this planet when it comes to international trade or whatnot. And I never bought into the idea that there could be a ideal deal between two countries that they both can agree upon, because we export debt and they import goods and services. So there had to be some imbalances all along. So is this information you're sharing with us now a part of the cover-up, you think, for this trade deal that will never be done? And then what is situation? When will this be exposed if this deal situation is a hoax to cover up stuff like this? You know what I'm saying? Like, when will this be exposed? A part of the restructuring, the collapse, or will we find out after all that?
No, probably after the fact, during the restructuring and the collapse, and whenever the reset happens, and then the new terms are just agreed upon. You know, it's interesting because we're getting very, very close to this point. Just yesterday, somebody sent me an article out of Mexico. Newspaper outlets around the world are starting to report that the global recession is here now. Just yesterday in Mexico, they're saying that the global recession is here now. And the only way that Mexico is protected right now is if the USMCA gets passed through. So, you know, it's more than just China. It's other countries as well, too. But, like, we're literally at that breaking threshold point right now, right, where we're talking about, you know, these deals, if they don't go through, that's what they're hanging their hats on in Mexico, that this trade deal is going to go through with the United States, or else their economy is going to implode. You know, what is everybody hanging their hats on this trade deal with China? You know, it's all politics back and forth, or the long game. I don't know. But like you said, that's an interesting dynamic about the possibility of, you know, covering this up, because it's not getting any press at all.
Well, it says I'm going to pull up an article. And so whenever I hear a statement being made by a political figure, I always assume the worst or the opposite. And so this was as of October 2nd in reference to what you just said. And it says, there is no trace of a recession in Mexico, the president says. So our President Trump here touts every 48 hours it's about the economy on his Twitter. The economy is going strong. We got the strongest job numbers. We got the strongest stuff. I'm thinking like, it's a problem, because presidents especially, they don't know anything about economics in general. They just say yes and no according to their advisors. And so Cutlow could be telling them, you know, Trump, you know, we're everything's fine. So Trump's like, the economy's strong. Cutlow said, you know what I'm saying? And so here the Mexican president, I believe, or somebody says, Manuel Lopez or Obrador said on Wednesday that there is no recession. And so you got an article you said sent to you about the recession is now.
I'm trying to find it. They call it, you know how we call it the USMCA? They call it the TMEC, and it stands for like Tratado. It stands for like Tratado Mexico, Estados Unidos, Canada, or something like that. But they're calling it, we're calling it the USMCA. They're calling it TMEC. Okay. Here, for example, is let me see, and I actually got it sent. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out which one is, but I don't have WhatsApp installed on this computer, so I don't know where the exact article is that I was sent. But anyway, let me just send you a link, because here's one of the things that's about it from just yesterday.
Okay.
But yeah, so now they're shifting gears already, and they're saying that the world has entered into global recession, and as long as we can get the USMCA passed, we'll be okay. So don't worry, Mexico, we got it covered. So they're basically, you know, betting the farm that a trade deal with the United States is gonna go through. And then interestingly, I don't know if this is still the case, but I think it was in August, Mexico overtook China for the first time ever to have like the largest dollar amount of exports to the United States as a result of this trade war with China. Really? So that's also an interesting dynamic as well.
Really, when I pulled an article up here. It says Mexico must prepare for a possible global recession. So possible, yeah. So that's something like politicians and just political figures in general. Their job over the last decade plus has been to keep confidence in the system, because because the average person don't really bother to investigate for themselves, and they only listen to the people who read our teleprompters and the people and the information they get and the sources they get their news from. And so when I hear stuff like this, and it's a possibility, but they're trying to reassure us that it's not currently now, that lets me know that it's already underway. Like, that's one of the things where it's hard to hide, because I don't really not to say this in a bad way, but I really don't have confidence in words that come from political figures, especially news anchors that read teleprompters. But so I try to read through it, and even if I'm wrong, I feel more comfortable with my guess than I do with these type of statements here saying, no, we're good, no recession here.
Yeah, and that article I showed you, that wasn't even the one that I was looking at. I don't know where the one I was looking at was. I don't have it right now saved as a bookmark. But it was talking about like the recession was here now. It wasn't talking about preparing for the possible future recession. And then it was talking about how it betted its whole stake on that trade deal. But yeah, just like you said, we see no recession. There will be nothing in my lifetime. The economy's in a good place. It's just the global economy is a little bit weak. All of these things, right? It's like, it's the complete opposite.
Now, here's something I find to be very interesting as well. And so this is another little slight indicator at the true state of what's going on. And so I would imagine other nations as well are looking to have MMT type of policies implemented. As it says here, Mexico plans infrastructure blitz worth billions to shore up economy. And so it looks like more governments now will use fiscal policy. They feel forced to use fiscal policy now to try to keep this expansion going around the world. So whatever this infrastructure blitz is worth, they're going to try to print, once again, probably $400 billion over the course of, it says the investment package comprises projects worth more than $400 billion over the course of 2018 and 2024, the administration said. So they're going to try to bring in $400 billion worth of probably pesos to try to build roads and houses and give away free stuff and factor in a little bit of stimulus / helicopter money and helicopter pesos.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that'd be dollars, because that'd only be like $20 billion in dollars. So I'm sure that's $400 billion in dollars, but that's still not even that much over until 2024. I mean, what's that going to do? That's a drop in the bucket compared to what, needs to, the amount of money that needs to be created to keep this expansion going.
Yeah. And then here's the thing is, and then once we get to 2024, then what? What? So so what that tells me is that between now, they've priced in their ability to create infrastructure packages that are believable up until 2024. So that's their calculations, which lets me know between now and that time frame, that's as good as their wisdom and knowledge can go. Because after that, they don't know.
Yeah, and you make me think about something else when you say that, because, like, for example, yes, I do think that fiscal stimulus is going to be what's coming with these MMTs, these infrastructure plans, all this and all that. But what if that's not enough, right? It's probably actually going to be both. It's going to be monetary and fiscal, right? Because just one is not going to cut it. And when it comes to the fiscal stuff, I mean, that stuff is just so slow moving, and to get it ball rolling.
Now watch this. So my thesis or my premise has always been that we're witnessing the implosion of monetary and fiscal policy when they collide. And in between that is our national currencies, is currencies around the world, is the collision point. And so I'm thinking, like, as you said that, I'm like, okay, so neither one of them will work because it's going to be reflected in currencies, and it's only so much paper and digits you can bring above ground before people just can't use them anymore because they don't purchase anything. Because no matter how much the Federal Reserve bring into existence digitally or paper, there will not be an increase in goods and services to offset the cost. So just the supply and demand will kick in to where there will be way more supply in units of accountability or lack thereof, and it's going to be a finite amount of goods. And so much time and energy people will be willing to give in exchange for digits and paper, as their wages have to continue to go up to kind of make it worth getting up in the morning to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're in for some interesting times, unfortunately. You wanna go through the chat one more time, because I don't think we got all the
Okay, let's go through the chat.
Even got the questions there.
Okay, so you can keep an eye out for some things and vice versa. And also, we're approaching our hour point, so we want to get ready to dial back. I see 844 per ounces according to U.S. debt clock. So it looks like some calculations of metals.
Yeah, and then the Mason Chick says the crown used Chinese labor to build railroads high on opium. Yeah, talking about like the opium wars and like all the like going in there and messing with China, and it like set them back for hundreds of years. Certainly. Recession
started when it says, so Sovereign Dirt said recession started when Bush said, quote, "The people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon. And if you want to help, to go buy something." Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah. So what's going to be this one? I don't even want to think about that. Here's a question. One of them is, when buying silver, does it still hurt JP Morgan? Buying physical silver hurts the banks, any bank, period, because we're opting out of the system. That's like the one thing that we can do as people to get back our power, is to opt out of the system. And the easiest way to do that is with silver, gold as well. Your take on Hong Kong? I don't know. What's your take on Hong Kong, Mike?
It's interesting how, from an NBA standpoint, that whole development with the NBA, Daryl Morey talking about, he's supporting Hong Kong protesters, and then the Brooklyn Nets owner, who happens to be Asian, tweeted also or replied back something saying like, I don't appreciate you supporting that when it's against customs and to obey laws or whatever. Completely different governmental structure there. So what we consider free speech and democracy and all that stuff like that, over there, it's disobedience and you're punishable by law or whatever over there, because there's no freedom of speech over there. So it's a little conflict here in the NBA and on this side, and they're going to cut off some funding. So we'll see how that goes. So once again, in the sports realm, it's about to be problematic, because the NBA especially always wanted to have a marketplace in China, eventually get some teams over there directly. But this trade/political chaos could really hinder that, which is going to cause a lot of problems, because sports is a big part of our society here. So if there's issues with that, then that's going to be another thing worth talking about. But as far as the Hong Kong protests, when I saw something come across my screen saying that they passed a law saying no mask can be worn, I'm like, the facial recognition stuff makes you have to wear one. But because the government is so dictatorship-like over there in comparison to what we have here, it's one of the things where it will only incite more people to try to get out there and put masks on, and just really it's going to get worse, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think there's definitely some sketchy stuff going on. How much is the U.S. stirring up in there? I'm sure we're stirring up a lot.
I believe a lot.
It's kind of like a turf war, right? It's a turf war between the United States and China. That's what Hong Kong is right now. It's a turf war, and it's a proxy war. And think about this, right? Remember also this week, and this ties back into my COMEX thing I've been talking about this whole show. Remember earlier this week, the White House is saying, well, we're imposing capital controls on China or direct investment. So I mean, well, hello, gold is money, right? And China's just walking into our paper gold market. Where's the controls on that?
Yeah.
And I hate to bring it full circle with just one simple point there, but I also got to thinking about that when I'm thinking about Hong Kong too, because a lot of what happens with Hong Kong is just like, it's kind of like a gateway into China, right? That Western investors look at Hong Kong as. Whereas China looks at it as, well, Hong Kong is actually part of China. So, I'm not the expert on that, but I know that stinks to high heaven too.
Yeah, I do agree. But we are at the hour point. And so it looks like a couple thoughts out there. But yet, as always, it's been great hanging out this afternoon. If you've enjoyed the back and forth, don't be afraid to donate a thumbs up beneath this video here. And it definitely shows your support for the channel. And also, if you find anything informative here, share this information, get it out there, because once again, a lot of things we're talking about here, unfortunately, you won't get it anywhere else as far as mainstream sources. You have to go alternative to get it, and we go from there. But as always, I want to, if you go to the Silver Doctors page, the blog rather, I posted a video about the pension situation from 1972. And so I encourage you guys, if you have not had a chance to go over to the Silver Doctor's blog and to check out that video, you definitely will want to do so, because it's one of the things where it's very, it brings it down to perspective as to how long this situation has been going on. Like the pension crisis, retirement crisis is nothing new. And in my personal opinion, I believe it's only going to get worse. And there's nothing really the system and the financial, it's nothing the financial system can do to save itself. So it's up to you personally. So once you hear the stories of people who basically trusted the system to deliver on promises, and there was more than enough broken promises to where all those people during that film were retirees in the 70s. They're all long gone by now, but they lived through hell on earth because they gave 30 or 40 years of their best to a corporation. And because there was no regulation really, they weren't fully vested. They got fired months before, days before, and they only got pennies on a dollar, if nothing at all. So definitely go check that out. You'll definitely, it'll be very informative. So other than that, with that being the case, anything else you want to leave us with, Mr. Half Dollar?
Yeah, I'm reassessing, right? I've been looking for the metals to turn and rally. Silver hit $18 overnight at 3:25 a.m. I don't know where the price is now. I don't think it's $18. But now with this thing coming on with China, this is really a wild card. The more I think about it, the more I look into it. So I'm not having to reassess right now, because the cartel has definitely painted gold and especially silver's short-term charts very bearish. We've got a second lower high forming in gold en route to a second lower low. That's going to be a trend. And we got an RSI that's not saying silver is terribly oversold, which means that there's a lot of room to run to the downside if the cartel wants. China throws a whole new monkey wrench into it. So I'm going to have to just kind of step back and kind of let this settle a little bit, because I think this is big. I think this is actually really, really big. And nobody even in the gold and silver space is talking about how big of an implication this is.
Yeah.
But then again, we're just, me. I mean, you're not. You're cool. And you're like upstanding, fine citizen and individual. Me, I'm this tinfoil hat wearing guy everybody likes to call about.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate those compliments. And so you're not a tinfoil head wearing guy with yourself, but hey, man, it's been great. And so unfortunately, it looks like the call-in feature didn't work today because I missed a couple calls, but for whatever reason, it started to stop. So we missed out on probably a lot of great calls. So I apologize for that. I'll try to iron out the kinks so we don't have any more interruptions that way. But other than that, everybody be blessed, be safe, enjoy your day, and definitely if you come across any news articles, definitely leave them in the comment section of this video here so other people can take a look at them. And then also I'll check back in and see if it's stuff we can talk about on Monday. But other than that, everybody be blessed, be safe, enjoy your day. Peace.